How do you update a database table inside Python? In the last video we looked how to connect to a database. So now we're going to move on to how to update the database. So what do we have? We have our Python, we have our database, and we have our connection. So our database connection, quite straightforward. We created the cursor. We run the SQL code in a c.execute Python, and then we can see the results by using a for loop. So we saw that in the previous video. So we had a menu system where we had some very simple SQL statements with different options. So how to do an update? Here we need to know which table, we need to know which record, and we need to know what needs to be updated. So for example, we could have the persons table with the ID number 1, that's the record, and we want to change the address to the avenue. It's quite straightforward. So let's think, how can we do this? We need to show the record, change the record, and then show the record. So when you amend something, you want to see it first, make sure you've got the correct record, you want to change it, and then you want to confirm that the change is correctly done. So how do we do this? We select the record by identifying the table and then the record by probably an ID number. Then we update the record, so which column needs to be changed and what are the new details, and then once it's confirmed we want to see it to make sure it's okay. So let's have a look at our code. This is the code from before. So let's just look at one option. So let's select the record. So here we can just select from the persons table where the person ID equals 1. So that will just show us the first record. Now we want to update it, so we're going to get some new details from the user, and then we're going to update it, which we'll show you in a minute. And then we're going to look at the record again to confirm that it's changed. So that seems quite straightforward. We're just going to get the details from the user, which we know how to do in Python already. If we get the ID, it's going to be a number, and the new details could be a number or it could be a string, for example. How to do an update? Let's look to see how we can input a number and how we can input a string. So here's the SQL to input a number. We're going to have personal ID. So here we've just got number 1. Now in the SQL that's in the Python, we can't just put in an integer. It needs to be a string. So we can use the string and brackets to change the number to a string. So that's quite straightforward. We're going to add it to the SQL string by using the plus symbol. So we've got a string plus another string. We've got the SQL string plus the number, which is a string. How about entering a string? So here we've got our SQL entering last name equals Smith. Here we're going to put in a string. You can see we've got name equals Smith, and then we've got our string of the SQL code. We've got one part of it, and then we're going to add the string name, and then we can print that in a for loop. So how do we do an update? Here's an update. We can update the table, set the address, where the personal ID equals a number. So in this example, the address we're going to change to the avenue, and the record has an ID of number 1. The code is pretty similar. We use c.execute, so we update it. The main difference is this commit. We want to commit the statement when we want the database to be updated. So we use the c.execute, the same, but this time instead of just a select, we don't change anything, we are changing something, so we need to commit that. What's the difficult part? Well, can you remember how we input a string? Here's the example with name. And here's our update. We've got the whole update as one string, which is not the case when the user inputs a number or a string. So let's explain how we do this. Here we've got the Python execute code with the update inside. So we've got the update, the table name persons. We're going to set the address to the new address where the ID equals the ID number. So we've got, in this example, the blue is the SQL. We've got our new address and ID number, and the yellow is our Python code. So let's go through these in stages. So we've got our update. We set where the ID equals 1. So this example, we're changing the address to the avenue. So that seems straightforward. So here's our SQL in blue, and here are our variables with the address to the avenue and the ID number 1. So remember, we have to enter string. So instead of the integer 1, we're going to put that in the string and brackets. And remember, to the avenue is also a string, so the double quotes. So here's our update SQL statement. Now, to use it in Python, we're going to use the c.execute with brackets, single quotes, and our SQL inside. That seems quite straightforward. So we've got our execute, and then we've got all of our SQL inside with our variables in the brackets. Now, we have to split these up. It's not all one string. So we've got our SQL, then we've got our variable, we've got our SQL, then our variable, then our SQL. All of that inside our Python code. To concatenate the strings of the SQL and the variables, we're going to use the plus. So here we've added the plus around the string of the address and also the string of the number, the ID number. So now we can look at this as we have our SQL, the update part, then we've got our address, then we've got our SQL, the where person's ID equals, and then we've got our final variable inside the string brackets. Now we've got to make sure we've got all of this as strings in the Python. So we've got cexecute, then we've got our SQL, that's one string, and then we're going to add the address, then we're going to add more SQLs, a string, and then add a number that we've changed as a string, changed to a string. So with our final update, we've got our cexecute, we've got our SQL string plus address plus SQL string plus the string of the ID number. The difficult part, if you see, we have update person set address equals, and then we've got a double quote because their address will be a string in the SQL. In the Python, this SQL is also a string, so we put that inside single quotes. So we have a single quote, then our SQL, and a single quote, and our SQL includes a double quote. That's pretty confusing. So here you can see cexecute, we've got single quote, SQL single quote, plus address plus, now we've got another string, and this string, because it's the SQL, will have another double quote in. So you see in this example we've got a double quote, a single quote, and then after the address we've got a single quote and a double quote. So you might need to look at this slide a few times and go through our example stages to understand this. But this is the answer to how you would update a record with SQL inside Python. Okay, thank you for watching the video, and as always, if you haven't before, please subscribe. Bye for now.